I'm Kathy Kuntz with the Dane County Office of Energy and Climate Change, and I'm excited that we're having this Sustainable Leaders Collaborative webinar about food waste and composting. It feels like this topic that we've been thinking we should talk about for a while, and so I think it's exciting that we've got some cool updates to provide today on some things that are happening in various communities. Okay, I'm hearing from Deb that my sound might be a little garbled. So we're going to hear from what has been happening with Madison's waste pilot. We're going to hear some of what Dane County's thinking about as the future sustainability campus that's not a landfill, and Dane County Extension is also going to talk about some composting resources that might be of interest to folks. And our aim is to kind of provide some information and then really have an opportunity for folks to have some discussion so we can think about where else the collaboration happens. And with that, I'm going to turn things over to Stacie, Reece, and Bryan Johnson at the City of Madison to take it away.
Hello, everyone. Great to see everyone here this morning. We've got a brief slide deck that we'd like to go through with some of the history of City of Madison and our journey with food scraps. So I'll pass it to Bryan while I set up the slides.
Yeah, so I'm Bryan Johnson. I'm the Recycling Coordinator and Public Information Officer for Streets, for the Streets Division here in the city. And it really has been an adventure, to say the least. We've been tackling food scraps, or attempting to tackle food scraps here at the Streets Division for over a decade now. It's been a long road that we're still on, not one we didn't expect it to be quite this long, but here we are. So my part of the presentation, I was going to give some history and explaining where we started, some of the challenges we had along the way, that kind of leading up to where we are now. Then Stacie will take over and then take us the rest of the way home for our time today. So next slide. So the little curvy line there is symbolic, to say the least, of how things have gone. And that plan use create scrap there at the bottom is something Stacie will probably talk a little bit about, kind of where we wound up now, where things are standing at the moment with our food scraps. So next slide. So to give a little bit of the history of it, we did begin our pilot with food scrap back in 2011. That was after some years of research in that by my predecessor in this job. We began collection with 500 homes and just a handful of businesses. Our collection was the same kind of vehicle that picks up the trash and recycling at your house was the same vehicle we used for the food scraps at the time. So guys stayed in the vehicle, person stayed in the vehicle, robot arm came out, grabbed the cart, dumped it in the top of the truck, sat down, and they drove off to the next stop. In the place we were taking it, this was before my time. I've never really learned the name of the place where we took it, but wherever we were going with it, they were really forgiving with what was in there. They weren't trying to make a compost that you could sell. It was a compost material they wanted to use for fill material. So early on, we were allowing things like pet waste and all sorts of stuff that, and not really sweating things like coat hangers or batteries and all sorts of weird stuff that people would throw in there. Wasn't a big issue considering we weren't making a material that was supposed to be field applied afterward at the time. And so from 2011 through 2013, the program slowly expands. We add more volunteers. The way we were adding volunteers, though, we would pick a trash collection route, ask for volunteers off that collection route. And our trash routes are usually 800 or so stops or homes on a trash route. Our rationale was that we know we can do this many homes in one day. So how many ever people volunteer on this route? If everybody says they want to do it, we can still get that work done in a single day. Whenever we ask for volunteers, we usually get about a 22% volunteer rate. People on that route that'd be willing to be part of the program. And so for the first few years, everything was relatively okay. Then things took a turn. In 2014, the composter we were taking material to closed, but we kept trying to keep the program going. And our first stop after the initial composter closed was UW Oshkosh. They have a dry anaerobic biodigester there where they're capturing the methane from the food scraps and then making a compost material out of the back end of it though. But they kicked us out because of all of the things that weren't a problem for the previous composter. We couldn't get them back out. We couldn't make the residents stop doing it in 2015. So we're still seeing plenty of cat litter, plenty of everything that shouldn't have been in there. So in 2015, Oshkosh kicked us out. And then 2016, we went to this other anaerobic biodigester in Middleton that many of us are familiar with. We've tried working with that facility several times over the year. 2016 was our first attempt at it. The thought process was like, well, what contamination is still in there, would sort of disappear considering the massive volume of stuff that they deal with at that digester, with all the cow manure that goes into there, that maybe the plastic fractions and the things that we get wouldn't be noticeable. We were wrong. It was still in there, and it was causing a problem with the composter on the back end because all the little plastic stuff that was still left over. And so let's go to the next slide. So at our height, we did have about 1,100 homes in our volunteer program. Those are those polygons on the map. Those are the trash collection routes that we had. There were 40 businesses in there. And that's so mostly it was small restaurants that volunteered to do it. There was no charge for this, by the way. It was just part of the regular services the Streets Division provides. There were a handful of schools, or at least one preschool that was in there as well. And that's just what we did. So we collected this, and at our peak, we had 334 tons of food scraps we were able to get out of those pockets. And so let's then take us to the next slide. Oh, shoot, let me go back one. And one of the things we were pretty intentional about too with the program was trying to pick different neighborhoods to where the food scrap collection was, just to make certain, because like that's why you'll notice on the near the orange square, one of our volunteer areas was the trailer park off Moreland Road. We wanted to include them, and also some of the near east side people where we know there's going to be volunteers, but we wanted to scatter it around because food scraps, this is an everybody problem, not just the committed and affluent who want to do this. And so that we tried to space it out the best we can. Okay, so next slide. So to continue on our journey. And again, this is just sort of the high level skimming across the top of what we've done and like the ups and downs of this process, because there's been a lot of things that my cutesy little Canvas slides aren't quite capturing. But in 2017, after we got kicked out of the digester in Middleton, we tried to go to a composter in Caledonia, Wisconsin, because that's where Milwaukee was taking their pilot program as well. Also kicked out for contamination again. It was a lot of the paper products they couldn't handle or was blowing around a lot. And also silly things like a shelving unit we delivered to them somehow. I don't know if it was a mistake in our operations because we're not really set up with the facilities that we have to aggregate food scraps, put them onto a truck and haul at any kind of distance. Our transportation isn't built for that. So we were trying to make do with it. So maybe some trash got mixed in by mistake, and other just sort of problems that people have from like either wish composting or wish cycling, putting in compostable plastics or biodegradable plastics that don't belong in there, that weren't breaking down right, or being careless. And so they kicked us out in 2017 and 2018. That eventually spelled the end of our organics program. That was whenever we officially closed the door, gathered all the bins back that we could, because which was interesting. Some people never gave us the bins back. So you might still see some little black curbside carts out there some places. But we tried, but anyway, so that was the death of it. But we're not quitters. If anything else, we don't quit, because we know this is a big problem, because it's like 10,000 tons at minimum, just from what the Streets Division collects of food scraps in the trash every year. And that's a waste. It's so wasteful. We can do better with this. So in 2019, we tried the pilot again, where we quit calling it organics, because one of the things we thought was that people didn't understand what that term means, because organics could be bed sheets. You can buy organic clothes and towels and stuff like that. And what we've noticed is that one of the communication problems is that a person would buy a house or volunteer for their home, They'd get their third bin, they would try to use it the best they could. They would then move, new homeowner would come in, find this third bin. We would never know about that transition. And there was this mystery food or organics bin there that they didn't know what should go in there. And Lord knows they would never ask the mean old city what to put in the bin. And so problems happen. So we decided to name it food scrap recycling to be more deliberate about what it is. We also changed our collection method. Rather than just grabbing it with our automated trucks, it was the old-fashioned style of collection where it was a person hanging off the back of a vehicle, peeking in the bin before we dumped it in the truck to see if there was a problem, dumping it into the truck by hand, looking again to see if there was a problem, and then moving on to the next stop from there. And that in 2019, it was a short trial. It was we only ran it for 7-8 weeks, I believe, in the fall, in just one particular neighborhood, just to see if we were this deliberate with what we could take and that deliberate with the collection, can we keep it clean? And we did. We were able to work with it. We thought that was great. The problem is that it was so slow for us, taking a one-person job and turning it into a two-person job. And again, it's a single collection route that was about 20% of the people on the route. And it was still taking us pretty much a full day to pick that way by being so deliberate, by peaking, dumping, peaking, putting the car back and going on. So we decided we were going to have it at the drop-off sites at the next year because it was still created a barrier for entry where people had to bring us the food scrap. So what they would bring us would be clean, because that's the main thing that we need more than anything, because none of the facilities we have, they don't have the contamination control set up to be able to deal with the problems that a municipal collection will give them. They just can't keep it clean. So by putting these little barriers for entry in there, then maybe we can keep it clean. By people that bringing it to us are only going to be the ones really committed to doing this, so they'll follow the rules. 2020, something else happened that year that we might still be dealing with, and which is why we're all on Zoom, and so that, we didn't get the turnout that we wanted in 2020, but it was working. We kept it clean. We didn't get a lot of food scraps, but what we got was right. And then in 2021, though, the place where we're taking the food scraps quit taking food. The biodigesters, the gas that they capture is worth more money without food mixed into it. And so they kicked out all of their food substrate people. So anybody that was bringing them food like us, I saw Travis on the call, so he knows as well that got kicked out of the digester as well from UW. And so that killed our drop-off program as it exists. But because we didn't have anywhere to go with it at the scale that we were getting it, but we're not quitters. We don't give up. So that led us to where we are today. So next slide. Ta-da! And this is where I'm going to transition to where Stacie could talk about the variety of grants that we got. Our Natural Resource Defense Council grant was actually awarded to us, or I think it awarded to us, late 2020, then we started using it in 21, right whenever the digester quit taking food. So the timing was really bad for that, but we've still been able to use the funds from them and the USDA grant that we got to do a lot more interesting stuff. So Stacie, take it away.
All right, thanks, Bryan. So yeah, I'll just kind of wrap up City of Madison efforts more recently. We started the application process in 2018, but was awarded in 2019 a grant from the US EPA to do a feasibility study for a digester specifically for food scraps. So not a manure digester with a little bit of food scraps, but just totally food scraps. Specifically because, Bryan mentioned that the manure digester over Middleton no longer accepts food waste because of the gas value. Well, there's different gas values out there, and there's a specific gas value for specifically food waste. So this study is the back of the envelope, how much feedstock is out there. That's not only City of Madison streets collection, the carts and the trucks, it's everybody, institutions, hospitals, schools, the surrounding communities countywide. So this was a scan of how much food scraps was out there. If we were to digest it, how much gas we could produce. And then if we were to sell that gas, how many dollars we could get to then pay off the capital cost to build a digester. So that study is available online if you'd like to take a look at it. But I think it's a helpful understanding of what is the potential for our greater countywide community. Bryan also mentioned, we're not quitters. And so what we went back to the drawing board and said, we need help. We need resources and help to help us understand a better way to go about our food scrap journey. And so we had been engaging with the Natural Resource Defense Council, who has a Food Matters initiative. They've been working with municipalities and communities since 2016 on helping them develop strategies around food waste. They had cohorts of cities that would apply to receive grant funding and be part of a cohort. We are currently part of the third cohort of Great Lakes communities that includes Chicago, Cincinnati, Columbus, and Detroit. And some of the strategies, they learned a lot from the first two cohorts, created a bunch of resources and toolkits and templates for us to just basically implement with some Madison flair. Some of the strategies that we chose specifically was to pass a resolution, setting a goal to divert 50% of our food waste from the landfill by 2030. Also an awareness campaign. That's kind of where those plan, use, create, scrap artist posters came from. We also had a bus wrap. But yeah, it was a way for us to start building out some materials to help with the awareness of what are food scraps, what is compost, and also using the food waste hierarchy. So reducing before it even becomes food waste, using it, being creative, and food recovery, as well as at the end, recycling. Expanding drop-off sites, so ways that we could expand community composting any way possible. Again, with the drop-off sites being shut down, it kind of threw a wrench in that, but we were able to kind of find some creative solutions, such as buying compost bins and doing some compost bin giveaways. And then also business engagement was another piece of it. And I could talk about that, how we use the USDA grant to leverage that. And then last but not least, our health inspector is a route. It's our Public Health Madison, Dane County. Their sanitarians are the ones that go around to all food folks, give them their grades, and make sure they're running their operations successfully. So we created a magnet that talks about safe food recovery to donate to food banks, as well as food scrap recycling, as well as just how to reduce food waste in general. So just thinking about them as a resource. And if you'd like any of these materials, we'd love to share out these materials. Again, these are templates. We added some Madison flair, mostly just artistry as you see here, but we'd love to share out this information and these templates. We then kind of wanted to layer on from the NRDC grant. We saw an opportunity, and this was something that the NRDC actually helped us apply for, was a grant through the USDA for community composting. And there's two elements of it. One, and we actually borrowed from the city of Baltimore, their model where you set up food scrap drop-off sites at farmers markets. You staff the table, you have the staffers look at the person's bin to make sure there's no contamination, then they dump it into a much larger bin, as you see on the left-hand side. They then collect that at the end of the farmers market session, and then they take it to a farmer. For City of Madison, we're taking it to Robert Pierce's farm, south of here, called Neighborhood Farm Solutions. They're turning it into compost, growing, using it as soil amendment to grow vegetables that they then sell back at the farmers markets. We have two farmers market drop-off sites that have been funded through this grant, one at South Madison Farmers Market and one at the near east side at McPike Park, both on Tuesday evenings. If you'd like to drop off your food scraps, you're more than welcome to do so. We're trying to breach 10,000 pounds this summer alone. And then another piece of the USDA grant was an economic development piece of it, which was a restaurant challenge. So we're engaging the restaurant community to learn how they can reduce, again, using the food hierarchy, waste hierarchy of reducing food waste at the onset, how to recover or donate, use creatively, and then also how to compost if they so choose so. We are partnering with Sustain Dane on the USDA grant, and so they have set up a website where you can learn more about those different roadmaps on how to reduce food waste as a restaurant. This is my last slide. I just want to, this is a zine that we had some artists help us put together. It's a little bit busy, so you don't have to zoom in. We're more than welcome to share it. It folds up into a zine, which is a really nice handheld way to have how to compost at home. Like, we're handing these out with the compost bin giveaways and handing it out at tabling events. And then we have on the upper right-hand corner, we had a magnet that was created. And then on the lower right-hand corner, we have a sticker that was created. So these are all deliverables and ways that we can push out information to the grander community about food, our food waste initiative. And so then my last sort of lessons learned is as you start your food waste journey is understanding where can you take it. That's currently a little bit of a conundrum. There are a couple options out there, but each one's a little bit different. As Bryan mentioned, each one's going to accept different things. They're going to have different logistics needs. How do you haul there? Do you need a truck? Do you need bins? And then it's what can you collect? We started with too much. And then we had to kind of narrow it down. It's different. Backyard composting, there's vermin that come for the bones and the dairy. So there's, again, different things that you could take, but then there's a composter in Sun Prairie that's taking some of those items because they have an in-container digester. So again, you need to understand the what. And I think there's a broader conversation. If we have all these different options out there, how confusing that could be, just like recycling on what can be taken and what can't be taken. Again, the logistics piece is super important. And that's something that could be different at smaller scales versus larger scales. But that was definitely something that we had to really, really dive into. The why is also super important. Why are we doing this? There was a recent waste characterization study for our Dane County landfill that about 20% of what's going in the landfill currently is organic material that could be diverted. So that's something that's really important to share out as you're spreading awareness and education around food waste, and also some of the climate change impacts with methane. So again, the messaging around this is super important. And then lastly, the who. We're dealing with human beings. Understanding human behavior is super duper important. We had to change our messaging from organics to food scraps because we realized that didn't really communicate what we were trying to do here. Who, we have to understand that people, want to make it easy. So you have a bin, they're going to throw whatever they want in that bin. So how do you make it super duper easy for them to understand things? Make it easy for them so they don't have to put extra effort into getting that source separation and diverting. So with that, I'll go ahead and stop sharing and we can pass it on to the next speakers.
Terrific. Thanks, Stacie. And then we'll turn to Roxanne from Waste and Renewables, the county.
All right. Can you hear me okay? And
yes.
My screen's up and ready to go?
All set.
Excellent. Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for hopping into the webinar today. I'm Roxanne Wienkes, Dane County Department of Waste and Renewables. And our story goes hand in hand with the city of Madison's. We partner on a lot of big initiatives as they are one of our largest customers at the Dane County landfill. But I'll tell you a little bit about what we do at the landfill, a little bit of our compost history and a little bit of our journey. But what I will focus on is where we're at right now for planning for the future and a big project we've got going across the road from our existing site on Highway 12 and 18. So you're looking at an aerial image of the landfill. We operate the active landfill. We've been taking waste there since 1985. We operate a number of recycling programs, the largest and most substantial of which is our construction and demolition recycling facility on site, where we take full loads, roll-offs of dumpsters of construction and demo trash. We sort it and we recycle wood, aggregate, metal, some vinyl siding. We have our clean sweep facility and some smaller recycling programs. And we also have a brush yard. We do wood chips, woody material. But not compost at this site. So we, prior to 2019, we did have a compost operation just for yard waste at this site. And prior to that, we also operated compost facilities at various other locations at the county back since the 1980s, late 1980s. But that came to an end when we had to expand the landfill into the last corner of the site that we're in right now and put a pause on that. And I know that left some communities with nowhere to go with their compost. So we got a lot of calls the first couple of years after that. Where do I go? What do I do? And since then, I think folks have been able to locate some private companies to help them out. but we recognize that there's still a challenge for a lot of businesses, a lot of residences, and a lot of communities. And one of those, again, is our partner, it's the City of Madison, on the larger project I'm going to talk about here. Oops. Before I tell the whole story, I'll get through my slides here. There we go. So there's a couple of people, key members of our team that work on compost and landfill operations. You may have met some of these folks. So as our goals towards getting a compost facility that accepts food waste back up and running, you might see Allison Rathsack's name, Sujata Gautam's or Lindsay Carlson's names. Watch out for them. They're going to be the movers and shakers from our team on these projects. So hopefully this is just one early time that we're all going to be together in the same room, and there'll be many more. So here's our timeline, 2022. We're planning for the last cell construction at the landfill. We've got about until 2030 until our Rotafeld site closes, at which time we're looking across the road to the O'Hara Hills Golf Course. We are close to closing on a land sale deal for the eastern half of that property, where we hope to do a little bit more than a landfill. We are planning for a sustainable business park that includes a compost operation with the ability to take food waste. And we're trying to build a system where landfilling is the last resort. We'll get into some of the numbers. Stacie mentioned the waste sort. We're trying to peel away those biggest chunks of the waste, those easiest to grab sections of our waste stream, and do something else, do something better with them. All of them have their challenges in collection and transportation, which Bryan and Stacie highlighted, and they've been through that journey. So there's going to be, we'll learn a lot from them, and we'll be able to take what they've learned and help us implement our programs. I'll come back to that one at the end. So this is what the concept looks like. We are looking at 30 plus acres for a sustainable business park. And what we're hoping to do is have dedicated building or drop-off area for different materials, yard waste, compost, food waste being one of them, but also other waste streams that we see that we can divert from the landfill waste stream. You know, we're targeting mattresses. We are very interested in plastics, and anything that we can feasibly get out of our Dane County waste stream and back into, use as a raw material, into heading us towards that circular economy. So this is just a schematic of what that concept could look like. And one of the buildings, like this one right here, represents that drop-off area where you drive in, drop off your waste material, your C&D, your plastics, your organics, and then maybe over here there's a mattress recycler. So you hop over, hop off and unload that mattress there. We see a lot of really successful models for reuse stores at this with this concept. We see it up in La Crosse County, where they've got a Habitat for Humanity restore outside of their landfill. So a lot of good examples, and it's just taking all those parts and pieces and putting them all into one place and calling it something. But what we're going to focus in on for this particular webinar is our plans and our status on achieving and meeting our goals of having a food waste composting operation by 2026. So with that partnership with the City of Madison, we've told them, you're willing to sell us this land to do this awesome project. So what we're willing to promise you is a compost operation that can take food scraps on, day one. So that's what we're working towards right now. We're doing a lot of research. We're touring a lot of different facilities. You see examples all over the country of folks who are able to do this at a large scale successfully. So we're trying to find those, analyze those, get the best examples that are going to work for our area, for our waste stream, and for our community, and put them into action. Stacie mentioned this. In 2020 we performed we hosted rather the DNR to do a waste sort of our waste stream. And here are the figures around what makes up our Dane County, our waste stream. So you can see this biggest chunk here, this 34% was classified as organic material. I mean, that's a lot. And this section over here breaks that down into what that consisted of. You know, over 50% of that 34% was food waste. So that's where Stacie's 20% came from. This chunk right here, it equals about 20% of our total waste stream. So we take about 180,000 tons of waste, municipal solid waste at the landfill each year, and that equates to 60,000 tons of organics, and then food waste. That's over 37,000 tons of wasted food going into the landfill. I extrapolated that and tried to get that into a per capita number, and I think it's low. I think the city has estimates that the city alone makes 60,000 tons of food waste a year. So it's not all coming to the landfill. We're not able to capture it all as part of this waste sort, but those are the figures that we have, and that we have to go on to try to size a facility and recognize what the potential is here for material to be collected. So those are some of the metrics we go off of. So this is where we're at in our process. I mentioned we're coming in on a milestone with our partnership with the city, and the land for the project will soon be transferred to Dane County. So we're cruising along on that regard administratively. From the compost side of things, to meet our 2026 timeline, this is the phases that we're looking at. So we are doing some preliminary investigations. We're doing site tours. We're getting our staff geared up. And there's some other programs that we're getting off the ground right now to prepare for meeting and getting into operational status in 2026. There's a permitting process with the DNR that has to occur, so that'll occur through 2023, 2024. We expect construction to start in 2025. And construction, what does that mean? What are we constructing exactly? We're not entirely sure yet what our facility will look like or what model we'll use. We're investigating that right now. There's options. We're talking about a lot of yard waste to start out with, and we, from the city's example, will start small and start simple on the food waste side. We will make sure we've got that down pat, and then we'll try to pilot new materials, try to get additional things into that waste stream. So again, I don't know exactly what we're going to collect, but we'll start it small, start it simple, straightforward. We've got some wisdom there that we've been given. And so we're looking at potentially a combination of different composting technologies. Maybe most of the yard waste goes through a traditional windrow composting facility, for example, but to minimize odors, to be able to accommodate those food scraps, maybe we start with some different technology for a portion of those that yard waste plus the food waste, and then we scale up. All of this, keep in mind, is in an effort to get to what Stacie mentioned regarding the regional scale digester, right? So we see this as the first step towards getting a consistent, clean food scrap stream so that we can move into digestion. And then not only do we get the environmental savings of removing the food scraps from the landfill and generating methane, we get the beneficial reuse and the gas and energy production side if we can move to digestion. So it's a huge cost, it's a huge investment, and the revenue has to be there, and it has to be a sure thing. Otherwise, none of these plans are sustainable. And that's on the compost side of things too. So we have to make sure that whatever plan we put in place can be sustained, so that these programs don't come and go, and you don't see that yo-yo effect that everybody's experienced for so long on the food waste front. So that is our goal on the county side, is to be that stability, is to provide that those resources. We don't know the operational model yet. So there may be, I'm not sure if there are composters on this call right now, but I know, for example, the city of Sun Prairie is, you've got some options that are emerging. We've got others that are in this business already. Partnering with existing companies is 100% it's on the table. So we will be issuing RFPs and RFIs in the 2023 timeframe. To seek these partnerships and to figure out how this is going to be operated, how it's going to be run. But again, just having the county's commitment towards managing food waste is moving us in that right direction. So that is where, let's see. Oh, I got another really important slide. So I mentioned some of our priorities already, but how we're preparing meetings like this, we need to get in front of this and make sure everybody's on the same page and working towards the same goal. If we're going to do a regional scale program, we've got to have everybody in the region on board and ready to roll something out. So glad to see everybody here and glad to have this opportunity to chat with everyone. The campus, we are planning, we're going through a lot of different various forms of outreach and engagement and planning for our sustainability campus project. And then another thing that we rolled out for this year, 2022, was an organics management grant of our own, where we can try to help those communities that didn't really have a place to go with their compost come up with solutions for how to get us through until we're able to offer, compost collection, again, not collection or transportation, but you know what I mean. So this outlines the folks who have applied and been awarded funds as part of our organics management grant. It's nothing like the city of Madison has received in terms of funding. We're offering, just $10,000 out to different groups, but we were so happy to see that the McFarland High School, as we've been talking to them for a while, and this really, the Children's Museum, all of them really check the boxes in what we're trying to do here, but I especially encouraged by the high school eco club in McFarland applying, and they're going to start a vermicomposting system until they can then work up to a larger scale in-vessel system. So it's so encouraging to see a really common sense approach towards making progress in this area and operated by the kids, by the students. So yeah, that is what I have. Here's just a kind of a placeholder slide, all the people that we're working with on our various projects. And if anybody ever wants to talk about the campus or composting or where your communities are headed, just please reach out, let us know. Reach out to me directly, or if you've met Sujata, feel free to reach out to her. All right, Kathy, I think that's all I got.
Thanks so much, Roxanne. And then we will round this out with Michelle from Dane County Extension, just talking about composting a little bit more at the individual scale.
Yeah, thank you all. Great segue, Kathy, because I was just about to say that. So my name is Michelle Probst. I am a natural resources educator with Dane County Extension. And again, yes, just like Kathy said, Stacie and Bryan and Roxanne gave such a great presentation to talk about, where our communities are working at a systems level change, which is awesome. And so I'm here to talk today about the composting program that I do in Dane County Extension, and kind of how we're looking more at the education at that individual level. So at Dane County Extension, we do have a history with composting education. So we started with our Master Composter program. Some of you maybe on the call know a little bit more about the history than I do, but looking through files, it has been here for over 10 years. And we've been doing this program. We've partnered with the city of Madison to host this Master Composter training. So this, like many master programs, if you've heard of Master Gardener or Master Naturalist, this was similar into the fact that we would provide training for individuals, and then they would go out and do service work within the community. So I've been in this position for about a year now, and when I first started looking at this program, I noticed that it kind of needed a little bit of updates, a little bit of facelifts, I guess I'll say, for lack of better words. And so what it is as of right now, we're still kind of in this, we're still in the development phase. So we're going to be launching what we're calling the Wisconsin's Composting Stewards course. The name switch was intentional because extension programs across the US have really identified that the term master is, it has a pretty negative connotation to it. And we don't really want that associated with our program. So we were kind of intentional about that switch. The real big update that we really needed for this course was the update in context, in talking about food waste and food scraps, right? When the Master Composter course was first created, it was very, it was a little reactional to the recycling law in Wisconsin, which banned yard waste from landfills. And although we still want to keep that context within the course, just talking about food waste and the amount of food waste that goes into our landfills and the environmental impacts from that. And also just as composting is a tool in our toolbox for climate mitigation strategies. And especially that it's probably food waste reduction and composting is probably one of the easiest individual actions that folks can do as a climate action strategy. So this course, it will be launched later this fall. It'll be an online course, open across the state. It'll be open enrollment and asynchronous, so folks can enroll and take it on their own time on their own time as they would like. My target audience for this course is a very small scale. So someone wanting to do it within to compost within their backyard. Maybe someone at a school who wants to, incorporate this into a science course, at a community center or place of worship. So again, more of that like smaller scale versus some of the larger scales, what we've been hearing this morning. So just again, some of these key learning outcomes through this course, understanding that environmental impact of landfilling organic waste, how to create your own composting system, how to use that finished compost and how it can improve soil health. And then again, this really like community aspect of how you can promote composting within your community. Again, that kind of stewardship act. And Roxanne, I'm really glad you mentioned your organics management grant program, because we want to link that as a huge resource for folks in Dane County that after they take this course and want to start something locally within their neighborhood, center, school, whatever it may be, that there are then opportunities to help support that work and move it forward. So again, the course will be launched later this fall. I'll drop our link in the chat box to our webpage, and there is a sign up email. You can sign up for our email list to get notified. We'll also be, announcing this at many different levels and many different scales. So hopefully you'll hear about it one way or another. Couple other things, I just want to talk about what we have now. We do have composting resources for those folks who maybe don't want to take a full-blown course on it, but just want to know how to get a compost bin started, how to do this. So we have a composting resources page that has a lot of materials that we in Extension have developed, but also local and state partners as well have developed. And then one thing that I'm super excited about, we had an intern this summer, Maya Walther. She's a student at UW-Madison, and she went and created this tabletop display to talk about home composting. So you will see there's 2 pull-up banners that talk about what composting is, why we should compost, basically how you get it started. The thing I most nerded out about and was so excited about is that our intern, she went in to a 3D printing lab at UW-Madison. She's not even an engineering student at all, but just went in and figured out how to design these compost bins that they're like, they're maybe like a foot in height. So, people can stop at, a table or booth and like look and see what this compost tumbler is, what this type of bin is. And so that, people can kind of see what might work best for them in their type of system. I'm also really excited because these tabletop displays are also available in Spanish and Hmong as well. These are free resources that you are able to rent through Dane County Extension. If you're interested in them, please just email me directly, and we can schedule a pickup and everything like that. So those are resources that we have for you all available. So in, thinking about, kind of that individual education, and then, what are some opportunities beyond that and future opportunities within composting education. So, one thing that I talked about, this course is really geared towards that small scale home composter, right? So what about those, kind of when we're building on a larger scale, like what I reflect on, I think Scott Semrach from Sun Prairie is on this call. And I think, Scott, you and I had a conversation back in the early spring, and I was telling you about this course, and you were just mentioning about things in Sun Prairie and maybe interest in taking the course. And I was like, well, I don't know what, this might not be the correct course, right? Because it's really geared towards that home composter. So like, what is there out there that is more for that high, for a larger level, a larger scale for composting? Over the summers, I teach at UW Stevens Point. I teach a soils field course, and I teach with Dr. Rob McKitch, who is a professor in soil and waste resources. And he does, he does a lot of composting research and is an expert in composting, in my mind. And one thing he mentioned was the Midwest Compost School. So this is something that was held at UW Stevens Point, I think for a few years pre-pandemic. And it was a very immersive course that, it was 3 days in training, but, it was really, again, geared towards that more like larger scale facilities and operation. So you can see some of the target audiences here. When talking to Rob about it, he was like, yeah, we didn't get just like a home composter at this course unless they were really, really interested in composting. But more at facility managers, landfill managers, city and administrators as well. So kind of looking at things again, that larger scale. And so then other topics covered, we're talking about recipe development for your compost, like especially when you're taking in like these massive amounts of feedstock, how to get your recipe just right, how to do compost testing, how to design your site, how to build your pile, how to manage those piles. And then they also did talk a little bit about food diversion as well. So in talking to Rob McKitch about it, he was like, they hosted it in Stevens Point. He's like, I don't think they have any plans to host this again. And he was like, if you feel that it's a need down in Dane County, he's like, I could give you our agenda. I could give you like the speakers we used. I can help with that type of training. And, that's something in extension that we can definitely help on the logistical side of things. But really, I also wanted to take this opportunity to talk to a lot of you that are in these types of roles of if this is something that would be worthwhile, if this is something that would be interesting for you all or needed, and to explore that if this is a program to kind of move forward in the future. So that's kind of all I have, and would really love your feedback on anything I shared, but also future opportunities. So
terrific. Thanks, Michelle. So I want to open things up for discussion. We've got lots of folks here from different communities and some academic institutions, and lots of terrific speakers with different perspectives there. What questions do you all have? And you can come off mute and ask. You can raise your hand. You can put something in the chat. I'm entirely flexible.
I'm happy to kick it off with kind of an easy question. Because my family is so personally excited about the Little John's Lunchbox Cafe. Is that gonna have sustainable grant funding, and who are the partners there that are making that possible? Because I just feel like it's a really important educational opportunity. I see so many families there, like with the food scrap piece of it and the recycling piece, as well as like the equity piece of it, and also just like the food is really cool and interesting. And so just like, what are the plans there, and how is it going to be sustained, or is it a short-term program?
Well, I'm not sure. So the Dane County Department of Waste and Renewables did award them a compost grant so that is our kind of extent with the logistics of the program. We did partner with the Madison Children's Museum. Is there anybody else on the call that this would be better directed to? I am absolutely
You are
regretting
the-
right
you are the
now
one.
that I had to miss their grand opening ribbon cutting a couple of weeks ago. But Sujata was able to attend. So we have a relationship with the Madison Children's Museum. They did the design of our trash lab. So we've been plugged in and closely connected to them through that. They designed an exhibit all about the landfill and what we do at the landfill and recycling and how we can do better. So if you haven't seen it, it's fabulous. I'll put in my shameless plug for the trash lab here. But the Little John's Lunchbox program, I don't know. I'm actually just pulling up their website now. I'm so sorry. I don't know exactly how they're planning funding and
That's okay. I don't mean to put you on the spot. I just want to, I want to give my own plug. If anyone hasn't seen this yet, it's really cool. And it's pay what you think you need to pay, which is a
Right.
really cool aspect of it.
Are they sourcing the food for that, for like the normal Little John stuff, where it's like not like donation sort of? Is that kind of where the food's coming from, or like the kind of gleaned materials? I too am looking on the website now. I know, just knowing Little John's like his business and being some of these gleaning operations that he's been involved with in that. So I didn't know if that's where all this was coming from as part of that thing or what.
donated from grocery stores and farms. Yeah, pay as you can. And I don't know if it's movable, right? It's not totally stationary at the Children's Museum, is it?
It's a cooler and it's a pretty big one, but yeah, I mean, I guess you could move it.
Oh, okay. So it is 100% permanent at the Children's Museum. Oh, goodness. That's all I got. Sorry.
It speaks to, though, one of the things I was thinking about when various folks were talking is that what feels like maybe a lot of separate pieces right now is really all of the smaller groundwork we need to do to be, as a region, prepared to successfully have regional food composting in the future. You know, everyone needs to learn this, whether they learn it doing a backyard compost where they maybe learn that organic towels do not decay in their backyard composter, and or whether they do this in taking things to a farmer's market where someone gently explains that to them. You know, all of the pieces of this that are needed. So we've got a ton of cool people here. What are you all thinking? Katie.
I just wanted to introduce myself and talk a little bit about a piece of this food diversion process that people don't really talk about a lot. So I'm with the Sun Prairie Emergency Food Pantry, and all of the food pantries everywhere in the world, but particularly in Dane County, have partnerships with local grocery stores, Quick Trips, Walmart, things like that. And we are sort of the first stop that keeps things out of the landfill. So about a third of what we get in poundage wise every year comes from Costco, Walmart, Quick Trip, Pick and Save. And these are food products that would otherwise be thrown in the dumpster. Often they're still good, not always. About 6% of what we get in so far this year has then gone on to some other kind of waste process. So that's a huge, I mean, that's, you know, hundreds of thousands of pounds that we stop from going into landfill, and about a couple, like 10, probably it'll be about 50,000 pounds by the end of the year that we end up having to move out of here because it's not fit for human consumption. We work with farmers. On occasion, we had been working with a local, that green box company in Sun Prairie, but unfortunately they just don't have capacity for us right now. And so we are going to be going with a national company, but that is fuel to truck that stuff elsewhere to be processed, and it's resources that could be used, you know, to create, you know, farmed for gases, made into manure, et cetera, locally, that will now be away. So it's something that we have to do right now to make sure that, we are responsible with our waste management. But what I would love to see in the near future is a way for nonprofits, food pantries, meal sites, et cetera, to keep this stuff local so it benefits the local community. And if it's a lower price, that would also be really nice for us. So that's really what I wanted to share, is that the pantries really represent that first stop from businesses to the landfill.
Mhm.
Katie, what is that national company that you're working with?
We have not signed a contract with them yet. Let me pull them up real quick. They also work with Costco, which is how we got hooked up with them, because we pick up at Costco in Sun Prairie 5 days a week. Yeah, of course, it is now not coming up in email.
Well, I'm always curious about who's all working in this space or not, because I know there was a company out of Chicago called Organics, who was like here for like hot minute.
Exactly
Oh,
what it
they're
is.
actually
Yep,
they're actually doing a thing. Okay, with an
Yes.
so ORGANIX. Okay, I know, like, because Santa Max was doing some food scraps, but then they stopped, and then I thought those Organics took over, but then I thought they also didn't. I thought they vanished. I didn't know they were still active in the neighborhood, so that's good to know.
Yeah, no, Organics is who we're going with. So we are in process of signing a contract with them. So hopefully we can get that turned around pretty quickly, because otherwise we're paying for dumpster and landfill.
Right. Terrific. Travis, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, thanks for presenting, everyone. I had a quick question: has the Madison Metropolitan Sewage District been connected to all of our conversations around composting? Just with the idea of, like, in theory, there's this idea that if we grind up our food scraps at the sink, send it through sewage conveyance to the MMSD facility, they have resource recovery there and can, basically have an anaerobic digester, get the energy out, and then they're going to have biosolids remaining. My understanding is they don't have the capacity if we told everyone to do that. So I guess my question is, or consideration is, it's like, this is like a Swiss Army knife idea here. It's not one thing fits all, but we have different channels or different ways to divert all this material. Just like not